we develop artificial intelligence, are we going to become extinct at some point? I'm with you. I think that the ending is perfect as is. I don't think that it needs any more explanation. They're obviously running away together. It's obviously, Deckard's obviously nervous. When he comes back, he's afraid that she's dead. And then, he's very cautious as they go to exit. He's making sure that it's clear before they do. But then, she steps on the unicorn origami. And there's that recognition by Deckard that, Gaff knows something that he doesn't. But they get in the elevator and, you're supposed to infer that they take off together and live a life. And that's what 2049 makes clear. Is that, they had a couple of years together. They had a daughter together. And it works just fine. I was never a fan of the happy ending. I mean, once I knew, because it's like, this doesn't add anything except some shitty voiceover about how long we have together. Which is, it's like, I forget what the exact line is, but it's like, I don't know how long we would have together, but blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, this is so stupid. Of course, that's the version that I first see, in junior high when I'm first introduced to this movie by my dad again, because he liked it. So I see this movie, and because that was like the early 90s, the director's cut wasn't really a thing yet. I think even film class, one of the film classes I had, we watched that, the theatrical cut. You know about the tacked on ending, right? Like where that footage came from?
No.
It's outtakes from The Shining. It's unused footage from The Shining. Them driving the car. It's not any footage that appears in The Shining, but that's what it is. So here we go. We're at the end. We talked about the test audiences not getting the movie. So Tandem adds the voiceover, adds the happy ending. Gets released June 25th, 1982. Alan Ladd, who is the Ladd Company is his namesake, chooses to release it on June 25th because the 25th of the month he considered to be a lucky day. Both Star Wars and Alien he had produced. Both were released on May 25th of their respective years. Both were huge hits, obviously. So he thinks 25th of the month, lucky day, release Blade Runner. Blade Runner does okay. I think it makes like 6 or 7 million its opening weekend. Not bad for 1982. And you said it makes like, 40 mil on like a 30 million budget?
Yes, roughly. So
it makes money. It's not considered a huge hit. Obviously, you're going up against E.T., which is, the biggest movie of that year and was the biggest film of all time at that point in time. So it makes money, but it's not really considered a huge hit.
Weren't they battling against, didn't Wrath of Khan come out in that orbit too?
Yep, Wrath of Khan is out that same year. I don't know exactly what date that is, but that's also out that June. It develops its cult following through like the home video rise in the early 80s. That's kind of how this movie gets big. You said that you talked about the Renegade cut. What's that?
I have personally never seen it. I just know the name of the cut, to be honest.
Okay. Because I do have that there were 2 cuts originally in its theatrical release. And that was the cut that's in the U.S. and North America, which is the domestic cut. And then there's the international cut, which is a bit more violent. And that's what's shown in Europe and Asia. I think that was unavailable until like home video kind of became big, and then later it gets a release on VHS. The Criterion Collection Laserdisc is like the 10th anniversary edition, I think, is the international cut. But I've never seen, I don't think I've ever seen that. I've just seen those main three, which is the theatrical, the final cut, and the director's cut. So I told you I had a great story on how the director's cut came about.
Yeah.
I will give it to you in a moment. Here we go. Not yet. Let me read you this one last thing. I found something that it's kind of on the release of the film. So we talked about how some critics, said, "Oh, it's kind of slow. It's not great." Roger Ebert praised the visuals of the original and the director's cut. Except he said that the human story is a bit cliched and thin. He does include the final cut in his list of great movies later on. Pauline Kael, who's notorious for being very picky, she actually praised the film. Says it's worthy of its place in film history, but doesn't like the development of the human characters. Kind of says that that's thin. So I told you it got that mixed review. Or mixed reviews, plural.
Yeah.
But, again, like I said, it develops this cult following once it hits home video. And that's... The 80s were obviously the rise of home video. And that's how it develops this following, and that's what makes it so popular. And that's what leads to... So, I asked you, do you know how this movie comes about, the director's cut of this film? How this came to be?
I do not.
This is the story I have. This is from Kenneth Turan in the Los Angeles Times. And this was written about 1992, about the time that the director's cut was released. Okay?
All right.
It came about accidentally. In October of 1989, Michael Eric, who was the director of asset management for Warner Brothers, had been put in charge of recovering and restoring materials on the studio's films. While digging through the vault at Todd A.O.'s screening room, Todd A.O. was a sound format that was used mainly in the 60s and 70s. I think it was developed late 60s, but it was a sound format. But this guy is digging through the screening room at Todd A.O. looking for footage from another film, and he finds a 70 millimeter print of Blade Runner, most likely forgotten about, never picked up after a screening at the Todd A.O. He finds it, and he basically goes about hiding it on the studio lot so that no one else would come across it. Afraid that some collector would come through, digging through shit, find it, and take it.
Mm-hmm.
This is October of 1989. In May of 1990, the Cineplex Odeon Fairfax Theater was hosting a classic film festival and screening 70 millimeter prints. They had heard through the grapevine that there was a 70 millimeter print of some Blade Runner floating around, so they make a request to Warner Brothers to screen it at this festival. Eric was a supporter of revival theaters, so he agreed, even though in the time since he had found the film, he had never actually run it. So he had no idea what he had. So in his own words, he says, "Everyone who gets up at 10 a.m. Sunday morning for a screening of Blade Runner really knows the film, and immediately they go to start the film and they know that they're watching something special. The audience was very rapt from the beginning. The atmosphere was incredible. The 70 millimeter print that he had was nearly devoid of all voiceover, lacked the happy ending. So they were basically seeing what amounted to the director's cut of the film. They had no idea, and this Michael Eric guy had no idea that that's what he had. He just got lucky finding it, after 10 years, almost, in some random vault in the screening room. There's excitement among film buffs, because this is something that was closer to Ridley Scott's original vision. Eric eventually screens it for Scott, and even though Scott claimed that it's not his final cut because the unicorn scene wasn't in it, And the Vangelis music and the climax is not there. It's a temp score from, I think it's Planet of the Apes, which is the Jerry Goldsmith score, I believe, who scored the original Alien for Ridley Scott. But it's close enough. It gets the ball rolling on releasing a new cut of the film. They screen it a couple times at like some repertory bookings in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. Sell out crowds. Like this rapturous word of mouth. So because of the big demand for seeing this version of the film that gets rid of all the shit that Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford did not want in the movie, Warner Brothers decides to pay the money to editors and technicians so that they can kind of piece this movie back together and release the director's cut. And even though Ridley Scott provides extensive notes and consultation to Warner Brothers as this is going on, he's too busy filming 1492 to really give his attention over completely to the project. So that's why he claimed that the director's cut isn't really his director's cut. And it's not until 2007 when he actually has like full artistic control over everything, and that's when he releases his final cut of the film. So I told you I had a good story on that. What do you think?
That's pretty wild, man. I had no idea.
Nor did I. I just happened to come across that article talking about Blade Runner. The article was written in 1992, so it's talking about the director's cut. But I thought, oh man, that's a wild story. Like, some guy just happened to randomly find this, and then he shows this movie, and you think you're going to just watch like regular Blade Runner, and all of a sudden, like, it's a different version than you've ever seen before. Like, that would be nuts.
A happy accident for sure.
Yeah. So that's how the director's cut came across. It was just kind of a random happy accident, like you say. Ridley Scott should have not done 1492. That's an awful movie. This movie only gets nominated for 2 Academy Awards, which kind of sucks. It deserved more. But we know how things go. Best art direction, which is incredible. It loses to Gandhi, which is the best picture winner of that year, which Gandhi didn't have art direction like this. So that was a shitty loss. And it loses best visual effects to E.T., which is the biggest film of all time at that point. And as much as I love E.T. and it has some great effects in it, the visual effects are nowhere near what Blade Runner has.
Consistency, yes.
So kind of a bummer that it lost those two. It deserved more. It deserved a bigger audience at the time. It's one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. For me, it's the second best sci-fi movie of all time. Sorry, 2001 is still the tops, but I believe a lot of scientists put this at the top. But I still say it's a close second to 2001. We're talking about 2001, which is amazing on the big screen. If you ever have a chance to see it, go see it. Wesley and I recommend it on the big screen. It's awesome. I still think it's the best sci-fi of all time because you're not supposed to understand it. It's just incredible. The effects are incredible. Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece. Blade Runner, close second. By the way, speaking of E.T., IMAX is re-releasing E.T. in mid-August. Go check it out. And Jaws is going to be released around Labor Day in IMAX. Go check that out.
For the first time, right?
For the first time for both of them. But I'm excited to see both of them on the big screen again. I have seen them in the theater multiple times each, but they're both fantastic films. Would love to go and see them. Check them out. Mid-August for E.T., Labor Day weekend for Jaws. All right, man. Any last thoughts on Blade Runner?
No, just go everybody, like if you're still listening to this, hopefully you are. You enjoyed this retrospective on the original Blade Runner, the final cut. If you don't own it already, or if you are